So, what to do when you feel stuck in life? This is one of my most favorite topics. And it's my most favorite topic with a really fun solution. So strap in, this is going to be a fun one. Have you ever noticed that there's a movement to life? There's like this pattern of moving up towards something, away from something, maybe even getting stuck in something or being in transition. I find that this movement to life is fascinating, and it almost feels like you're in a movie or maybe 10 movies at once. In fact, think about your favorite movie, because Joseph Campbell, who was a philosopher and author, wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, drew on the mythology of these patterns and characters and plots, and really made the point that we keep telling the same story over and over and over again, and that there's certain stops along the way and certain people that you find along the way. And so what I would like to talk about today is to learn, live, and master what it means to be really in your own movie. So what we're talking about is the hero's journey. And why is this important for us to understand? Well, because you're the hero of your life. And so let's take a look at some of those patterns to orient to where you are in life, who you're on this journey with, and what to do next. So first of all, what journey are you on? There are some very basic plots in every story that's been told since the beginning of time. And let's take a look at what some of those are now, and if one of those resonates with you, or a few maybe. So the first step is, what journey are you on right now? Think of a situation in your life and what that looks like right now. So are you overcoming the monster? Okay, how about this one? Rags to riches. Ooh, I love those plots. Okay, or even riches to rags. That happens. I know, I've been there. Okay, so rags to riches. Are you already sort of getting a sense of some of maybe your favorite movies, of some of these plot lines? Okay, then number 3 is the quest. I like to think of this as wanting a new job or wanting a new relationship, wanting something. You're going on a quest for something. This is almost like you're putting yourself into the journey, whereas maybe rags to riches or riches to rags kind of happen to you. So there's a little bit of a distinction to be made between these different kinds of plots. The quest. Okay, then we have the voyage and the return. And these last few get kind of serious. You've got comedy. All right, that one's not serious, but this one is tragedy. And then, of course, rebirth. So if you know what plot of a story you're in, you know what you're up against, okay? So in any one of these, you're up against a certain kind of what is considered a herald. It's a call. You've been called into this plot by something, either yourself or some circumstance or situation. So the next part to consider is, where are you on this journey? I find this really helpful. If you think of any plot of any story, there is a natural beginning, some sort of climax, and then a resolution. Sometimes it can also be a circle. There are a few stops along this way, but just for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to write 5 of them. So the first one is the anticipation stage, and I mentioned that. That's a herald. You are all of a sudden on this journey of sorts, and you are coming into it. So this is anticipation. Anticipation can also mean like I'm anticipating something good or I'm anticipating something bad. So sometimes the herald is something happy and sometimes it's not, and usually you will find yourself resisting it, you know, really, I want a new job, but I really just don't want to have to make another resume or update my LinkedIn. That's an example. Or something that's not, like you have to move and you aren't really too excited about that. So there's an anticipatory emotion to it. I didn't anticipate that. So then the next one is the dream stage. Usually once you've begun to take some steps in this direction, it doesn't seem so bad. Okay, I got the resume done, I got the LinkedIn done. All right, now I'm going to make some phone calls and I'm going to start reaching out to some companies. This dream stage here is where you get a sense of it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And that's a very important stage, because what comes next is the frustration stage. This is where you begin to confront the monster, right? So there's a little bit of an overcoming the monster in every journey, right? And whatever that is for you. So for me, my monsters could be like not liking to travel on an airplane and having to do that, right? So you have to overcome some challenge, some monster. Sometimes it could be yourself. You're fighting against yourself. That's like mine, totally guilty of that all the time. And so in this state, there's a lot of frustration. It's your first confrontation with really the monster, the enemy, and things begin to go wrong, okay? Dreamy, things are working out. Okay, now I've called a bunch of recruiters and I've reached out to a bunch of companies and I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not getting anywhere. What does this mean? What does this mean? Does this mean I'm not going to have a job? I'm getting frustrated. The monster of not having a new job, I would say, in that situation. Then we get to the next one, nightmare stage. So in the nightmare stage, I really don't need to give this much color because of its name, but this is where, you know, you've now confronted this enemy. You've confronted this enemy, so to speak, a few times now, and it feels like all hope is lost. You're about to give up. It's the 11th hour. You just don't know where help is going to come from. But hold tight, because resolution is the next stop. So don't get off the train yet. Keep going. Resolution. There's always a resolution. There's always a resolution. This circle always completes. The arc will always go up and come back down again. And it's about how you experience this and how you move through it with power and grace and ease and have it really go your way. Because a lot of us are just in movies that we don't know that we're in, or we didn't sign up to be in. And so being aware of this is a powerful thing to orient yourself into what and where you may be on a particular journey. Now, why am I talking about stories? I'm talking about stories because this goes back to the cave drawings. So there is something really innate in the way that we share concepts and religions and philosophies and information about how to even stay alive back in, you know, the hunter-gatherer and early days of humanity. And so everything is really packaged inside of a story. So one of the most powerful things that you can do is realize what story you're in, decide you want to be there anymore, and rewrite that story as well. And put yourself into one of these. Put yourself into one of these journeys, these fun journeys. They're not always bad. Lastly, who are you with on this journey? Super important, because no man is an island. And certainly I don't know of any story about just one person. So who? And I'm going to draw them into here because there's different times when, time and time again, in the story of humans and life and the way that we tell stories, there's also a pattern of when these people appear. And this can be really helpful to understand, because if you are missing this person, you may seek someone out. So let me give you some examples here. So I already talked about the herald, okay? And that is a who, because it could be a person. Someone comes into your life, you fall in love. This is a herald. Now you're on a new journey. So this could be a person, a circumstance, anything really. So the second person that you might find on this journey is maybe not a person. And what I mean by that is that there's usually some sort of mystical push towards the threshold. Remember, I talked about there being some resistance between these two areas here. So while you're still in the world that you know, you're being called out of it. This is the ordinary world that you know. And you're going to be pulled out of it by something mystical, or it's by something mystical. So again, something out of your control. a circumstance, or maybe you win the lottery, or maybe you're, in movies, people are visited by ghosts, or if I'm thinking about right now, Scrooge and how that was what brought him into the unordinary world. So he went from the ordinary world that he knew into the unordinary world. How many times do we feel like that? How many times do we feel like that in a year, in a month, in a week, in a day? I mean, I'm filming this in 2020, and I gotta say, haven't we all been on one of these all together at the same time? A few times already this year. So, out of our control, seemingly coming out of nowhere that we can detect, and it throws us into what is now the world you don't know, okay? So inside of this world that you don't know, what you need is an ally. So past this, I call them the 5 M's, okay? So you've got the mystical push, then you've got my ally, and that means you can't do it alone. So if, for example, right now you find yourself in a territory where you don't know what to do, where to go next, you find yourself in uncharted territories, you're going to want to find an ally. So do you have an ally in that situation that I asked you to think about in the beginning of this? Who could that be if you don't? Do you have a friend that could help you? Is there somebody with a skill that you can seek out? For example, when I rewrote my LinkedIn profile, I found someone that does that. I was really feeling out of my territory in trying to put something together that was professional and really got to the point of who I am. And so I went and I hired someone to help me write that. And so that was my ally in taking this next step in life that I was going through at the time. So an ally. Then we have another M, which is a mentor. A mentor is going to come along and teach you new skills. They're going to help you really own your journey, and they're going to pull you to higher standards, and they are going to encourage you and challenge you. So for example, in a movie like Star Wars, the mentor would be Yoda and the ally would be Han Solo. Can you see the difference between the two? Where Hans is helping Luke get around, and sort of they've been thrown into this situation and now they're sort of helping each other out, and there's even some cool tension inside of that allied relationship. And then Yoda comes along and really teaches the Jedi skills. He's challenging, he's a little bit mystical as well, he's all those things. So, and he's got the skills of the Jedi. So that's an example of a mentor. Then your next M, what do you think it is? You got it, the monster. So whatever you are facing, whatever you are up against, that is common for you. So hopefully you have an ally and a mentor by now, and you are at this frustration point. So this would help a lot to have when you're confronting your monster. So here's the monster. Yay. Yay. Lots of energy around monster, right? Because this is where the rubber meets the road and your life will change. So you go up against this monster, you realize that you have people along with you, and you finally win against that monster. You cross yet another threshold. This world that you go into, this world is a very interesting world because it is a mix of the two. In other words, you return back to your ordinary world. In most of those plots, the hero returns. But they return and they are now extraordinary, right? From what they've been given in this learning lesson here. Sometimes someone will come with a gemstone or a new skill, or maybe they've been married or whatever the case may be, but they now are returning to their ordinary life, but they are a mastered self. So that's the last M, is the mastered self. They've mastered something. All right, so now that we understand what story you might be in right now, and that you're the one telling it, key, where you are on the journey so that you know, okay, I'm frustrated, but that's part of the human experience, that's totally leaning into your humanness, being frustrated, not knowing what's happening, going into a new territory, a new world. What would life be if we just were born and just stayed right there. Nothing. It would not be exciting. And so where you are on your journey can help orient you to where you are. Give yourself a break and know that the resolution is coming. And then knowing who can help you place these people in your life so that if you're feeling frustrated, alone, hopeless, confused, or you need to rely on someone for help, that is a natural part of the human journey. We call it the hero's journey, but really you're the protagonist of your own life. And so finding these people, you can't do this alone. There's a lot of words, a lot of very powerful words on this page right now, and I can't imagine doing it alone. So what, in this circumstance, if you've been thinking about one all along, what would make a big difference to get you to the next step? So in the circumstance that I hope you've been thinking about while having this conversation today, is there somewhere that you could be using some assistance? For example, do you need some magic in your life? Do you need maybe a person? Do you need someone to teach you something or keep you going on your journey? These are all really critical things to ask yourself when you're either trying to move towards something, a goal, move away from something that you don't want anymore, that you're challenged by, when you're stuck, which is what this video is about, getting unstuck. Can you see the movement? Or if you're in a place of transition. So to bring it all together, the key is this. Mastering this movement through life will get you unstuck. It will also help you with a lot of things besides getting unstuck. It'll help you in any kind of those movements that we have, that energy and that movement to life. And to go with the Star Wars analogy again, just like that franchise, just when we thought it was over because Luke found out that Darth was his dad and the 80s were done, Disney buys the franchise and turns it into a whole universe. And now we have many, many stories and many, many characters and many, many plots all happening. So just remember, your life is a lot like that. You're always going to be on a journey. You're on multiple right now watching this video. And I feel maybe there was a reason that you were called to this video. And I hope that some of this helped. So if you need a coach and you need someone to help you through this process, please check out the link below and there's some resources there for you. If you're the kind of person with a fire in your belly and you know that there's a better way to do things, then you're gonna love this. I have a fun and free diagnostic tool for you to use to see if you're calibrated to your highest flow of energy. If you've watched any of my other videos on this channel, you'll know that I talk a lot about energy centers for people and organizations and how they're either harnessing their flow or experiencing leaks. It's an easy tool that you'll get a lot of benefit from, and you can use it over and over again. Head to the link below to download it and get calibrating. It's been so fun being on Michelle's channel. She is the epitome of a great coach and mentor, so this has been a privilege. I hope to see you in my next video.